Hello friends, welcome to Political Science and International Relations. In this video, we are going to study India-Japan relations. Under international relations. International relations is an important subfield under the larger subject, political science. Under international relations, you will be studying different bilateral relations as well as regional politics. You will be also studying international organizations like EU, UN, NATO, IMF, World Bank, and so on. Okay, before studying India-Japan relations, let me share some basic guidelines on how to study bilateral relations, regional politics, as well as organization for the PSIR subject. You should not study the bilateral relations or organizations like GS. In GS, the importance is given to basic understanding, conceptual knowledge, as well as important facts. You'll be studying GS international relations based on dimensions: social, cultural, economic, political, defense, strategic. I advise students to study GS based on these dimensions. Now, when it comes to PSIR option, you have to study across these dimensions as you study GS, but you need to go further in depth. You have to bring in the essence of the subject PSIR. Right. So, what else to study? You have to study the key concepts like realism, idealism, functionalism, power, deterrence, balance of power, conflict, and so on. So you have to bring in the key concepts, PSIR concepts. Next, you have to mention important scholars. You have to write at least one scholar and his view for short answers. For long answers, ensure to bring in at least two scholars. If you bring in the view of a realist scholar like Raja Mohan, you should bring in the view of a functionalist scholar like Harsh Pant. So try to bring in diverse viewpoints. Apart from this, when it comes to bilateral relations like India-Japan relations, focus on the opportunities. Opportunities you will be studying under GS, so bring it into the subject PSIR. Study about the irritants. Once again, you will be studying this under GS, bring it under PSIR, and look for the way forward. You have to come up with your own suggestions, solutions, innovative steps. So this is the approach for studying bilateral relations, organizations, and regional politics for paper 2 under political science and international relations. Okay friends, we will now study India-Japan relations. First of all, we should know the overview of the relationship. So we should always have a starting point of our study. How do you look at India-Japan relations? This is very important. So we'll first look into this, then we will study further. India and Japan relations, not as ancient as India-China or India-Central Asia or India-Africa. It is relatively newer, not very new, not modern, but relatively newer compared to India-China relations. India and China were maintaining relations more than 2000 years ago. But when it comes to India-Japan, the relationship can be traced to around the 7th century or the 8th century AD. you can identify cultural links. The most important cultural link was Buddhism. The Indian monk Bodhisena, you can trace his linkage to Japan. So don't forget, Buddhism was a major cultural link. For that matter, Buddhism was a major cultural link between India and China as well. Buddhism traveled from India to China 2000 years ago through the Silk Road. So this is how the relationship started. Later, trade started between India and Japan. Mercantile links also started. Same as India-China relations. You will find a complementary nature between trade relationship and cultural relationship. Whenever there is a trade route, not only does culture get transmitted, you also find people moving in. You find intermingling of the people, cultures, customs, and so on. Secondly, India and Japan share a very important value. The value is democracy. But something is to be noted here. Till World War II, Japan was not a democracy. It was an authoritarian state. It was a fascist state. The emperor was ruling Japan at that time. The emperor of Japan was expansionist. He wanted to conquer entire Asia. What Germany was for Europe during Second World War, Japan was for Asia during the Second World War. Their policy till Second World War was militarist. In fact, Japan itself was an imperial power in Asia. It conquered other countries. It waged war on states like China. But after Second World War, the policy of Japan completely changed. It became a liberal democracy. So, what is the philosophy? After Second World War, it was liberal democracy. Liberal democracy institution. Philosophy is liberalism. So liberalism philosophy and democracy specifically brought India and Japan together. Japan is a huge state by population, if not by area. So two states, India and Japan, two states located in Asia, we are very large democracies. If you look within Asia, only few are large democracies. The rest are not. China, huge state, but not a democracy. Pakistan is a semi-authoritarian state. Army wields great power. Only few are democracies. India and Japan are strong democracies. Thirdly, we were strong economic partners during the Cold War. Cold War started in 1945. Right from Cold War time, economic partnership was seen between India and Japan. Japan gave financial aid to India. It was one of the major countries that gave developmental aid. It also developed industrial linkage with India. Indian companies and Japanese companies collaborated with each other. The Suzuki Maruti collaboration was an example. Next, India and Japan are natural partners. What is a natural partner? You could have studied this under GS. Natural partners are two countries, two states, which share some common values like democracy, peace, non-violence. They can even share war policy as a common value, but they should share common values. Secondly, the two states should work with each other in a friendly manner. Such a relationship is called natural partner. Japan is a major natural partner for India. UK, US, France and Japan are seen as natural partners. Next, we are also strategic partners. What is strategic? Strategic refers to long-term goals and interests. So we work with each other for strategic goals and interests. The important strategic goals are peace, non-violence, democracy, working for a free, open Indo-Pacific. So Indo-Pacific region itself is a strategic realm under India-Japan cooperation. Apart from this, India and Japan are partners within many platforms. The important ones are Act East policy. Next is Quad partnership. Under Quad, India and Japan work along with US and Australia. There are 4 democracies within Quad. The aim of Quad is to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. Apart from this, one of the aims of Quad is also to check the Chinese aggression and hegemony in the Indo-Pacific region. Indo-Pacific region is a large geopolitical realm. Today it has become very significant. Indo-Pacific refers to the larger region stretching from the eastern part of Africa till the Americas. So this large region is called Indo-Pacific. You can draw simple map diagrams in the examination. Indo-Pacific is the largest geopolitical realm in the world today. So many countries are located in Indo-Pacific: democracies, non-democracies, authoritarian powers, federal state, unitary states, Islamic states, secular states. You see many kinds of states in Indo-Pacific. So the 2 important platforms are Act East policy and Quad. The other platforms are East Asia Summit, in which India and Japan are members. East Asia Summit consists of 18 member states. Apart from this, a very important corridor is the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, AAGC. It is a joint project between India and Japan. India and Japan develop infrastructure projects in Africa under the AAGC. Keep in mind, the eastern part of Africa also comes under the Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific region is nothing but the group of countries which are jointly surrounded by both Indian Ocean as well as Pacific Ocean. And there is a platform under which India and Japan cooperates. This is called G4. There are 4 states in G4: India, Brazil, Japan and Germany. All 4 are democracies. These 4 states support each other to obtain permanent membership at UNSC. So do not forget the platforms. So this is the starting point of our analysis. Let me summarize. India and Japan, natural partners, strategic partners. We developed relationship right from the 7th and 8th century AD. We were economic partners in Cold War era. We are partners in Indo-Pacific. We are democracies. We are peace-loving. We are not militarist powers. We are not imperial powers. We give importance to regional stability. Indo-Pacific region, India and Japan are common partners. The platforms are Act East policy, Quad and AAGC corridor, along with EAS, East Asia Summit. Now let's travel further into our subject, political science. I have given a separate video for a concept called mandala theory. I made a video yesterday. Please go through the video fully. It is very essential for political science. Now we are going to study India-Japan relationship through the mandala theory. To tell about the mandala theory in brief, mandala theory put forward by Indian political philosopher Kautilya. Mandala means circle. Kautilya studies foreign policy through geography and psychology. Under the mandala theory, he places the state, the home state, under circle. This is the mandala. He also refers to other circle in which other states are placed, and he is analyzing the relationship between the home state and the other states. This is the mandala theory. I have explained in detail in the other video. Please go through the other video. Kautilya calls the king of the state in question as Vijigishu. Vijigishu is the king, conqueror king. From India's perspective, the ruler of India can be considered as the Vijigishu. Kautilya wants the king to be a realist. He wants the king to expand. He wants the king to go for territorial aggrandizement. He wants the king to increase its resources and power. Right? So the king is placed in the first circle, Vijigishu. The immediate circle around the king. This circle has a state. It may have more states also. For the basic understanding, we can consider a state in the second circle which neighbors the king. The state here is generally seen as the enemy of the king. Ari means enemy. So the state placed in the second circle is the enemy state for the first state. The first state is the conqueror king states, the home state. The next circle is the friend for the Vijigishu or the king. This state is Mitra. This is the third circle. Mitra means friend. Ari means enemy. The logic is the immediate neighbor will be an enemy. The distant state will be generally a friend. This is the assumption. It is not a rigid model. There may be some exceptions, but this is the assumption of Kautilya. So nearby enemy, far away friend. And the circle goes on and on. Next circle, enemy. Or Ari. Now this Ari and this Ari will be friends. Right? Enemy of the Mitra. Next circle, once again there will be a Mitra or friend. He will be the friend of the other Mitra. Friend. Okay. Now Kautilya tells that the king should increase allies and he should eliminate the enemies. Ari is the enemy. The enemy should be eliminated. For practical purposes, at least the Ari should be checked. He should be contained. He should not harm the king. How to do this? The king should have more allies or friends. Now you can analyze Japan with respect to mandala theory. If you place India in the first circle and consider it as the home state, states like China, Pakistan are considered Ari, competitors or enemy for India. Now states like Japan will become the Mitra. Russia can also be considered a Mitra. So this is how you analyze Japan with respect to mandala theory. India is here. You have China, you have Japan. Draw the circle, Vijigishu, Ari, Mitra. Got it? So you have to give a reference to mandala theory under India-Japan relations. Kautilya talked about mandala theory under the 7th book of Arthashastra, the most important treatise of ancient Indian political science. Kautilya also talks about another king who is located far away. This concept is called Udasina. Udasina is a neutral king. Generally, he is assumed to be far away. In the present world, we can consider India's ally US as a neutral king. The king is located far away. He is neutral with respect to the region, but the king may be befriended by the Vijigishu. Today, India has developed a good relationship with US. So bring in these concepts: Udasina, Mitra, Ari, mandala theory. The concept of Mitra can be applied to the concept of extended neighborhood. Japan can be considered as a part of extended neighborhood. This term corresponds with the term Mitra under Indian philosophy. Extended neighborhood is a state or a region which does not directly share physical border with India, but this state maintains friendly relations with India. It cooperates with India. Such a state or a region is called extended neighborhood. States such as Japan, West Asia, Central Asia, Russia, Southeast Asia can be considered extended neighborhoods. If you take Southeast Asia, we work with this extended neighborhood under Act East policy. Japan in East Asia is also considered India's extended neighborhood. Keep in mind, Japan is a natural partner as well as a extended neighborhood. So there are many opportunities for India to engage with Japan. So we have discussed the important concepts. Now it's time to study the views of important scholars. Kautilya was a realist. His discussion of the mandala theory follows the school of thought of realism. Realism tells that the state will always try to look after its self-interest first. To ensure the self-interest, it will use power. In case of mandala theory also, the Indian state takes care of its own interest. India is not an imperial state. We don't use hard power, but nevertheless, we have to ensure our self-interest. We should develop mitras like Japan. Okay, friends. An important scholar who spoke about India-Japan relations is S.D. Muni. Ensure to write S.D. Muni in the examination. S.D. Muni, in fact, was referring to the larger region, East Asia and Southeast Asia. S.D. Muni tells that the sun rises in the east. Philosophically and historically, if you go by Indian tradition, the Indians are worshippers of the sun. We revere the sun. We look at the sun through spirituality as well as science. Since Japan is located in the east, Indians naturally respect Japan. And Japan also respects India. This is how S.D. Muni analyzes the state of Japan from a philosophical perspective. Okay, this is related to idealism. Earlier, Kautilya was following realism. Scholars like Muni is understanding based on idealism. Idealism is nothing but a reflection of the domestic values, principles of a country in the foreign policy or international relations. This is called idealism. Next important scholar, very important scholar, C. Raja Mohan. C. Raja Mohan is an Indian foreign policy expert. You have to definitely mention Raja Mohan in many of your answers under paper 2. Raja Mohan is a realist. He is like Kautilya. He follows the Machiavellian tradition. C. Raja Mohan tells that India should develop a strong friendship with Japan so that India and Japan can counter China. This is the view of C. Raja Mohan. Keep in mind, China is a common threat for both Japan and India. In fact, China and Japan had great blood in the past. China and Japan were historical enemies. China has border dispute with India. It threatens Indian sovereignty. But the enmity between Japan and China had a great legacy. It goes back before the Second World War. The Japanese were imperialists at the time. They waged wars on the Chinese. They unleashed violence on China. They maintained the spheres of influence on China. So Rajamon tells that India and Japan should join hands with each other to check the hegemonistic power China in the Asian region. Next view is that of Raja Basrur. Please take notes. We are studying comprehensively here. Taking notes will greatly help your preparation. You need not refer to multiple resources. Raja Basrur calls India-Japan cooperation as strategic partnership. Strategic partnership is long-term partnership. It is based on trust. He says that the India-Japan relationship is best labeled a strategic partnership and not alliance. Alliance refers to the cooperation between two countries for common goals and interest. There will be a common goal, but there will be distrust also. For example, countries maintained alliance during the Second World War, even though they had disagreements in philosophies. These arrangements are seen as alliances. But strategic partnership is much wider. It has trust. It is focused towards the long term. So Raja Basrur tells that India-Japan relationship is best seen as a strategic partnership, and alliance refers to the working partnership between countries during the Cold War. So he refers to strategic partnership as a post-Cold War terminology. Post-Cold War. Next view of Indian philosopher Swami Vivekananda, spiritualist, nationalist. Vivekananda, a very important personality associated with Japan. He greatly values the culture of Japan. He respects the Japanese people. He told, in my opinion, you have to write in inverted quotes. So please take notes in this manner. In my opinion, if all the rich and the educated men once go and see Japan, their eyes will be opened. This is the view of Swami Vivekananda. He has a very positive view of Japan. The Japanese people are nationalist, hard working, and they always try to contribute to the country. They are responsible. So this is how he sees Japan. Next is the view of S.D. Pradhan. S.D. Pradhan's view is very important when it comes to India and Japan relationship. He is the former chairman of Joint Intelligence Committee. Former chairman of JIC. Joint Intelligence Committee is a body under National Security Council. He served under this committee. He tells that India and Japan should work for the shared interest in the Indo-Pacific region. So S.D. Pradhan's focus is on Indo-Pacific. As I already explained, Indo-Pacific is a large geopolitical realm in which India and Japan can work as regional partners. So he tells that India and Japan should not lose this opportunity. Both India and Japan already have an initiative for the Indian Ocean region and the Pacific Ocean region. The strategy of India was put forward in 2019 by the present Prime Minister Mr. Modi. It is called IPOI, Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. Earlier, Japan started its own strategy in the year 2016. It is called FOIP, India, Japan. FOIP means Free and Open Indo-Pacific. Free and open means the Indo-Pacific is open to all countries of the world. It is open to navigation. It is open to trade. No single country can try to bring its hegemony. No country should try to enforce unilateralism. No country should go for hard power in the Indo-Pacific. Apart from this, India and Japan are working together to make the Indo-Pacific region a prosperous region in the future. So there is a humanitarian perspective as well as a developmental perspective. India and Japan are industrial powers. So we are working in the countries of Indo-Pacific to bring in peace. We are trying to invest in many countries. We are trying to create jobs. And we are trying to help other countries by taking the common value of democracy. So the role of Indo-Pacific should never be forgotten by a student of political science, but when it comes to India-Japan relations. So we have covered India-Japan relations in detail from a PSIR perspective. We will now quickly go through the opportunities and irritants. Opportunities and irritants you can study from GS perspective. You can use GS knowledge for opportunities and irritants. First opportunity is soft power. Soft power is the voluntary, friendly relations between countries based on culture, values, tradition, language, religion, and so on. Buddhism can act as a great tool under soft power between India and Japan. Secondly, economic cooperation. It is the most important dimension of cooperation between India and Japan. India and Japan signed a FTA, Free Trade Agreement, in 2011 called SEPA. However, India-Japan trade is relatively less compared to India's trade with other countries. For example, India-US trade, India-China trade, and India-West Asia trade. So we should develop the trade in future. Thirdly, from an ideological and cultural perspective, India and Japan have virtually no irritants. There are no problems. There is absence of ideological, cultural, or territorial disputes. We don't have any ideological dispute. Both are liberal democracies. We follow democracy. We value peace, non-violence. We want cooperation. So no clash in ideology. Similarly, no clash in culture. Both are states that tolerate different cultures. Both are liberal democracies. Thirdly, it is a mitra. It is located relatively away from India. There are no territorial disputes. But there were some irritants in the past. Till 1998, Japan suspected India when it comes to nuclear weapons. When India developed its second nuclear test and declared that we are a nuclear state, Japan imposed sanctions on India, but later they were lifted. Currently, there is no mistrust between India and Japan. Our cooperation and friendship have reached a mature level. Other areas under economic cooperation, Japan is currently building a high-speed rail network. In India, you should be aware of this. It is built between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. Next, Japan is helping build infrastructure in Northeast. So development of Northeast is a major concern for India. Here Japan is helping. Next, Japan is helping India build freight corridors. The Western Corridor is an example. Apart from this, India and Japan are working in areas such as biotechnology, nanotechnology, green energy, and IT. For a very long time, right from Cold War period, India was the largest recipient of Japanese ODA, Overseas Developmental Assistance. So India owes to Japan. Next important opportunity is the common threat from China. China is a common threat for India and Japan in Indo-Pacific. But this presents an opportunity for India and Japan to work with each other. China RE for India and Japan. We are working under platforms like Quad to keep a watch on China. Next is nuclear cooperation. India and Japan signed an agreement in the year 2016. It is a landmark agreement because earlier Japan suspected India. Japan had its reasons to do so. We cannot blame Japan. It is the only country in the history of mankind to become a victim of nuclear weapon attack. Apart from this, leadership is another important factor. The former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, he maintained good relationship with India. I hope you are aware of Mr. Abe. He was a reformist Prime Minister. He recently passed away. He was assassinated. His brand of economics was called Abenomics. The current Prime Minister of India, Modi, is compared to Shinzo Abe. Modi's economics is popularly referred to as Modinomics. Shinzo Abe respected India. He loved India. He is an Indophile. Indophile is a person who loves, respects, and admires India. So leadership factor is also very important. In his book Towards a Beautiful Nation, Shinzo Abe told that he would not be surprised if India-Japan relations overtook India-Japan-US relationship. Japan-US became the best of friends after Second World War. Till Second World War, they were great enemies. But everything changed after Second World War. Japan-US partnership is very strong today. But Abe told that he would not be surprised if India-Japan relations overtook Japan-US relations. Today, the triangle of cooperation between India-Japan, India-US and Japan-US is getting very stronger in the Indo-Pacific region. So it is not about a case of overtaking, it is about a mutually complementary role between the three states. Other opportunities, as already mentioned, are the AAGC corridor, Indo-Pacific cooperation, FOIP initiative of Japan, and IPOA strategy of India. India and Japan, along with Quad countries, conducted a military exercise in Indo-Pacific called Malabar. You can note down, conducted by the Quad countries. Recently, India and Japan formed an alliance in the Indo-Pacific along with a European state, Italy. It is referred to as the IIJ alliance. It is another opportunity. India, Italy, Japan, three democracies working in the Indo-Pacific region. Over the last few years, many European states are shifting their focus to Indo-Pacific. So it is to be noted that India and Japan have already spread their footprint very strongly in the Indo-Pacific region. So these are the opportunities. Apart from this, India and Japan support each other for permanent seat at UNSC. I already mentioned the group called G4, in which India and Japan support each other for permanent membership. Then India and Japan also cooperate with respect to climate change. Even though Japan is a developed country, Japan sympathizes with the developing countries when it comes to climate change. It is the greatest contributor to the developing countries. There is a committee under OECD called DAC, Developmental Assistance Committee. Japan is the largest contributor from DAC to the developing world. When it comes to institutional engagement, India and Japan regularly conduct 2+2 ministerial. 2+2 ministerial is the highest level discussion platform Under 2+2 ministerial dialogue, the defense minister and the foreign minister of two states will discuss important issues, pressing issues. India has 2+2 ministerial with important states: US, Japan, Russia. We can think about starting 2+2 ministerial with other states. If I remember correctly, we have 2+2 ministerial with 4 states: India, with Japan, US, Russia, and Australia. Okay, friends, the last is irritant. A student of political science should know the irritants also. Irritants can be problems, challenges, or they can be a negative aspect in the relationship. Anyway, Indian state should always try to overcome the irritant, convert the irritant into an opportunity. The basic irritant between India and Japan is seen in trade. Even though India and Japan signed a FTA in 2011, the bilateral trade is very low. Japan is highly developed. It has some concerns with respect to Indian products. It feels that Indian products lack quality. It is concerned about the inefficiency in the Indian industry. Apart from this, lack of transparency, patent regime, labor issues, and lack of infrastructure are other areas. So India should do its best to strengthen in these areas so that we can trade more with Japan. At the same time, Japan has more restrictions with respect to trade with India, citing the issues that I mentioned. So we can say that trade protectionism is an irritant from Japan's side. Japan should try to remove the restrictions in future. It can keep justifiable restrictions, but it should not keep too many restrictions. So change should come from both sides. Secondly, Japan is a partner of the Western Bloc. The Cold War period saw the enmity between two groups, Western Bloc and Eastern Bloc. Cold War came to an official end in 1991, but the legacy of Cold War continues today. Till 1991, we referred to them as Eastern Bloc and Western Bloc. Today, we refer to them as East and West. But the leadership continues. Western Bloc, earlier led by US, currently West led by US. Similarly, earlier Eastern Bloc led by USSR, currently East led by Russia. Now, Japan is a capitalist state. It follows liberal democracy. It comes under Western Bloc. So, how do you see Japan under the Western Bloc? As a capitalist state, liberal democracy, and as a country following market principles. Here, there is a practical problem for India. Now, Japan politically aligns with Western states like Germany, US, UK, France, and so on, in an issue-based manner. At the same time, it also works with India. But there are some areas like trade talks where Japan's interest is aligned towards the West rather than towards a developing bloc of countries. This is a minor irritant. Thirdly, Japan on its part is not very happy with India's closeness with Russia. India and USSR maintained a very unique friendship, special friendship, right from 1950s. Today the friendship continues between India and Russia. Even though Russia was the leader of Eastern Bloc, India did not align with Eastern Bloc or the Western Bloc, but we maintained a equal partnership with USSR, and later it continued with Russia. But Japan sees Russia as the leader of the East. So how is Japan seeing Russia? It sees Russia as the leader of the enemy bloc, East. Russia supports China. China is the enemy of Japan. So it works like a triangle. Here, it is not too happy with India's closeness with Russia. Under the current BJP government, India has come very close with US, but it still continues a friendship with Russia. Friendship with Russia has been slightly diluted, but we still continue with the friendship. So this is another irritant. Lastly, Japan's strict immigration system. It is an irritant. It is not allowing highly skilled professionals from going to Japan. Even highly skilled professionals are facing the problem with respect to the strict immigration system. Here Japan should work on the restrictions, try to remove the restrictions. I failed to highlight two important Indian personalities associated with Japan. I should have highlighted earlier. Anyway, one important personality was Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. You would have studied Netaji's Indian National Army under history. Netaji raised the Indian National Army INA with Japanese assistance. So Netaji had relationship with Japan. Netaji is one of the important personalities. Netaji was a practical man. He did not see any difference between the two imperial powers, Japan and the British Empire. Since Japan was fighting against the British Empire, which was ruling India, he felt it was right and resourceful to take help from Imperial Japan. And another personality, but not well known to many, was Justice Radha Binod Paul. This person is a big hero in Japan. I will tell you how Radha Binod Paul became a big hero in Japan. As you know, Japan and the other Axis powers lost the Second World War. The leaders of the Axis powers were brought to justice under different courts. For example, the Nazi leaders were brought under the Nuremberg trials. Similarly, the Japanese leaders were brought under the International Tribunal for the Far East. Now, this tribunal was a court which conducted the trial. It looked into the atrocities and the violence which were seen during the Second World War. Now, when many judges under the tribunal held Japan responsible for the violence during the Second World War and gave strict punishment to various military officers of Japan, Radha Binod Paul held a very different view. He had a dissenting opinion. He told that condemning Japan alone was not fair. He told that the military tribunal was being held more to facilitate the revenge by the Allied powers on Japan rather than ensuring proper justice. He pointed to the fact that it was US which provoked Japan. So Japan was provoked on attacking US. Leaders like Roosevelt, it is told that he wanted Japan to hit US so that the US can find a reason to hit Japan back. So Radha Binod Paul was highlighting to the violence and the instigation from the Allied side also. So he put forward a very different opinion. So Radha Binod Paul was greatly respected for his bold opinion and his dissenting voice under the military tribunal, which gave punishments to the Japanese leaders and the generals. I hope you have now developed a holistic knowledge of India-Japan relations. Thank you.